Hi there, it's Kevin with Gone Rogue Games, here with a different type of video. Usually I'm on here ranting about being a local game store owner or ranting about the market. Today I'm going to go back to a video series that I haven't done for a while. I think the last time we did a Barometer video was clear back in spring or early summer, so a lot has changed since then. We are still in a very hot market as far as TCGs are concerned, but we are starting to see some warning signs that this bubble is about to burst. So there have been a lot of people talking about that this could be a speculative bubble or a speculative frenzy or whatever terminology you want to use. All we know is that the TCG market just absolutely took off in 2025, and we've seen just so many card games start to compete basically for that same space. And we are heading into a cooling off period, in my opinion. And I think into the holiday season or into 2026, the theme is going to be consolidation. So I don't think that the market can hold as is. I think that we're going to start seeing some clear winners and losers of the games that actually are going to stick around for a long time, and we'll consolidate the popularity into the stronger games that I think are going to be able to last. Now, I'm not predicting a crash. I'm actually still predicting a very strong 2026 market because trading card games are still very hot, and for the right reasons. I think that these younger generations are starting to kind of find the appeal of unplugging and being in an atmosphere where instead of digital, you're actually playing in real life. So just the fact of holding cardboard is so much more appealing. And you can actually see that with like Riftbound. Riftbound was based off an online card game. Because you remember in the mid like 2010s, that was the kind of the flavor. We had things like Artifact, we had things, Hearthstone was at its height, and everyone was trying to make it like a digital card game. And now the opposite is happening. Everyone's trying to make a trading card game in physical form. And again, we're going to see some consolidation. So in this tier list, this is kind of a tier list. I have it set up a little bit different from scorching all the way to dead cold. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. If it's scorching, then it's extremely hot right now. And this isn't going to be like a tier list that is based upon absolutes. We're going to try to base the game on where it's at or where it was at and where it's actually faring compared to, say, summer or spring, the last time I did this Barometer video. So you might actually look at this after I'm done and say, no, there's no way that Magic is doing worse than, say, Bandai B Squad. But I'm not comparing Magic against necessarily Bandai B Squad. I'm comparing Magic against where Magic was. And so we'll get into that as we explain the list going forward. So without further ado, let's get into it, and we'll start at the bottom right here with Flesh and Blood. So Flesh and Blood is coming off of a hot set into a very, very cold set. So the Flesh and Blood Super Slam didn't have the greatest reception, and what I've heard, again, I dabble with Flesh and Blood. I'll play from time to time. It is not my cup of tea just because as a store owner, it's very, very hard to get the casual player into like playing into events at the local scene. Now, if I was in a higher populated, dense area, it might be a lot easier to cultivate a scene. But for my own personal reasons, kind of the niche we have here in rural Utah, Flesh and Blood is just something that's very, very tough for us to get going off the ground. It's a very highly skilled, highly competitive, and yeah, I think you have to have a very specialized store for it. But I still do, like I said, dabble in it and watch the market trends. And Super Slam is definitely not as good as the last two sets. And we've had a massive cooling off with Flesh and Blood. And I think that's where I'm going to put it right now. I don't know if I'm going to put it stable and neutral because it's still doing a lot better than the era of where Flesh and Blood, no boxes could go above distributor price. In fact, a lot of them were being blown out below distribution price, and we had like an overprinting problem. We had kind of a branding problem with Flesh and Blood, and it definitely did, or was able, the company was able to really get past that and start like carving out that niche for themselves. They had some really good tournament participation, and everything was on the up and up with high tides. Unfortunately, though, Super Slam is a huge warning sign that this isn't something that they have to continue, and that's a massive pressure for a game. We have this Silver Age that's coming out of Flesh and Blood that's trying to kind of restabilize things by creating another format that people might get. They've realized they price people out of having expensive cards be competitive cards as well, and they've created this entire format that's kind of like Pauper and Magic, which might give new life to like people trying to like compete, and they're actually going to support it. That's one cool thing that I will give them credit, is they are going to try to support those formats and print decks for them, do events for them, and kudos to them. Like I gotta hand it to. So that's why I won't put it in like a cooling off. I'm gonna put it in like a stable, because I would definitely, after high tides, would have put Flesh and Blood as like a warming or even close to maybe a scorching rating of how well high tides was received, and kind of the player base was just super ravenous for it. But we're not seeing that with Super Slam. Super Slam has been kind of a neutral set. I wouldn't call it like a terrible thing. And what I've heard from players is that Super Slam just wasn't very interesting as far as the new leaders that were concerned. But it does show you kind of the one of the just the holes in the Flesh and Blood design, that it has to continue to produce knock out of the park sets, or it does go right from like hot, scorching hot to, basically cool. So I'm actually going to throw Flesh and Blood over here in the stable and neutral. And for those reasons, like I said, it's not doing poorly, but it's definitely not. And okay, so now I guess we'll give my outlook of where I see it going forward in 2026. And I think Flesh and Blood is here to stay. I think it's proved itself. I think it's got, as I stated, a very ravenous fan base that is incredibly loyal. I've been on record calling Flesh and Blood like a kind of a cult following, like because they act like cultists. You can't even talk any negativity towards Flesh and Blood, or they'll dogpile you. And kudos to them for that. Like, that shows a very healthy, robust scene. But it is kind of a niche at this point. It hasn't been able to really hit those mainstreams. And now, in kind of the name of the game in the TCG world is really being that mass appeal, where it's competing with other products that are hitting that mass appeal. And then when that is then, like, local game stores have limited table space and limited attention. If you're a game store, unless, as I stated, you have that incredible zeal at your particular local scene, I don't think that's replicated across the board. So again, we're going to put Flesh Blood here at the stable neutral. All right, so let's go on to Gundam. So Gundam is kind of, I don't think I had Gundam in this last one. So Gundam, I'm definitely going to have to put Gundam as scorching, because there is no product available. It sold way past expectations. In fact, the Bandai, the manufacturer, has not been able to keep up with it. The game actually has had a really good reception as far as collectibility versus utility. So if you actually look at deck lists that people are playing, those cards are in high demand and have a high price. So it's not just like the collector cards that are selling well, but the collector cards are selling well from Gundam. Gundam has a strong IP behind it. It's got a solid, like, us One Piece players kind of don't like it because it's too similar to One Piece, but it's like it has very counterintuitive ways of using, like, the life. I mean, it's very similar how it plays out, but it plays out so differently than One Piece at the same time that, yeah, I think us locally, it's hard to really get the One Piece players to be converted over to it. But as far as now that I've played, like, at least 50 games of Gundam myself, we've ran a bunch of events. I think that it is different enough from One Piece to have its own little pill, and as I stated, it's got that IP behind it. It's got that fan base behind it. It's a solid game. It's not like a game that just tried to replicate mechanics, like just copy paste it over from one to another. They tried to find an angle that made it unique and made it kind of fit that Gundam theme, and I think it does a pretty good job of doing it. And the one thing I can say about Gundam, I wasn't around during, like, One Piece's early days, but I was around during, like, Lorcana and Wars Unlimited early days and some of these other games. And first sets are always a little bit awkward. They don't seem to have the depth that, like, now with One Piece now on its 13th set, I can only imagine, like, what OP1 through OP3 was probably like with One Piece, with not just having enough of the cards to actually fill out, like, a lot of the leaders and decks. And I think that's kind of the problem with Gundam. So I'm actually super excited for Gundam, because even with this second set that was just released, they kind of pressed the envelope a little bit more of what they can do with the game. I think there's a lot more they can do with, like, the shield mechanics and stuff. And so I think this one is going to be hot for quite some time. Now, is it going to be too much of a competition? I think its greatest competition would be with its other IPs. Like, Bandai is competing with other Bandai games more than it's competing with, like, other TCGs. So is Gundam going to get hot at the expense of One Piece? How long can they actually have this balance where people will play both? And eventually I think it's going to have, like, one of them is going to be a give and take from both of those IPs. And I'm not certain if Gundam is going to come out on top in, like, 3-4 years, or if then people will be like, well, One Piece is just superior. It plays very similar to it. Let's just go with that. As I stated, though, it does have a very robust scene. It's got plenty of content to work with to create more sets, and it's got a very excited fan base at the moment. So right now I'm going to put it as our first scorching, because, like I said, I would sell 100 times more than I had of this. The prices are way above market price. They can't print enough of it. Every set is Bandai pre-sells in months in advance, and all the way from set 3 to set 4, set 5 is basically sold out before it's even, been printed, and that's a good sign for the game. All right, so let's go on to Lorcana. So I think that pretty much Lorcana is going to be our first one that I'm going to give a dead cold to. I don't know if I'll say a cooling off. I'm getting some missed signals for this, but after, I'm not going to pull up I was going to pull up, maybe I will. Maybe I'll post some TCG data, maybe not on this video. I don't want to get too distracted here, and I know it's hard to be long enough. I'm 10 minutes into just 3 games. But Lorcana, after looking at the sales data, so they had to do some shenanigans to get Lorcana back on track. If you actually go from anywhere from set 3 all the way up to like set 10, what are we at right now? What's Fabled? I can't remember if it's like set 10 now. The box prices are way below distribution price, pretty much for every set. There are some that are $20, $30 below distribution price. We're talking about boxes that are selling now for, $60, $70. Fable is like, I believe, a reprint set. There's going to be a rotation coming up. Like, all these things are like, does it actually need that to happen? And the problem with Lorcana was they tried to be collectible and utility driven, and they didn't know what they wanted to be. They overprinted the game. Then the rubber band snapped back the other way, and then they underprinted the game. So here's my experience running like Lorcana. They've had some really wonky things with stores of having to re-register, having to reapply, which put a hiccup with Fabled, which then your numbers are based upon your last selling set. So I know a lot of stores, I've talked to a lot of stores that just have given up on Lorcana. And it already had its problems with being in the big box stores. There are products being released at like Costco that are, just better deals than local game stores have the even access to. And that can work for Pokemon and Magic. What that can't work is for a community-driven game that hasn't really got to the point that it is mainstream. And you think, okay, it's Disney, it is mainstream. No, it is not. Lorcana is not like, you have to be in the know to know the game exists. It's not something that people just go to their Walmarts and Targets and see it on the shelves and like, oh, I'm going to buy this game because I know about it. I mean, I've heard other people playing it. I have played it myself, or it hits that kind of nostalgia itch that Pokemon or Magic. At this point in time, like most people that are into gaming have dabbled in Pokemon or Magic at some point in their life. And then again, the little nostalgia hits of going to a Costco, going to a Walmart or a Target and seeing it on the shelf leads to purchases. I don't think that happens with Lorcana, and I think that's what we saw when they actually emptied a lot of shelves with Lorcana products and tried to then push them back in the traditional distribution route. And that's where you saw like a lot of sleeve boosters and gift boxes and things go back to distributors and then blow them out. And then stores had a hard time selling it. And it's just been Lorcana has been basically a game of catch up, of trying to overcompensate for I like to make this analogy a lot, trying to fly before they even learn to crawl. And if you actually look at TCG player data for sales for card singles, I think we're looking at Shimmering Skies. And again, I don't know if that set just had trash cards across the boards to it, but I think it was Into the Inkwell is what we're looking at. And beyond just the Enchanteds, which you have to say that Enchanteds are basically collector driven, because a lot of the cards that are worth money are just the iconic ones. Like you'll get the Stitch or the Mickey Mouse or something that is more iconic than the other Enchanteds, and that's why they have a higher price tag. It has nothing to do with utility or playability. It's basically just based upon the character that is portraying. But if you actually look at playable cards, like if you look at decks, like deck lists, there was like not even the equivalent of Mythics. I can't remember the rarity in different games, but I'll always use the Magic rarity. So Mythics, there wasn't a card over $2. And then I looked at sales data, and there really wasn't any sales data. We're talking like 1 to 2 a day, or maybe 1 to 2 a week. And that is showing movement. That's not showing a dead game. But this was a game. They used to have, 20, 30 copies easily sold per day of like a hot card. I'm even thinking of like, what was the set I played in? Like the Popsicle card, the common, it had so many sales per day. And that has completely died off. And again, maybe I'll have to look at more things like the Fabled and the deck lists that are surrounding it. I know that there's still tournaments, and that's what I've in a lot of the comment sections, people are saying, oh, my events are still getting 30 to 40 people these Lorcana. But just the data does not lie. And TCG Player is one of the best places just to kind of scrape data. Lorcana is definitely not where it was at, especially in its early days of its first, second, third, fourth set. And I wouldn't even say it's like even close to its fifth, sixth, seventh set. Like Fabled is giving a missed single here because the main reason that Fabled and Whispers in the Well have these positive price, like it's actually for stores that actually can get the product, they can make a decent profit margin on. That has nothing to do with how popular the game is. That is the lack of supply. That is the Ravensburger that has now tightened their print runs and have been very strict to where it actually goes. So basically, only stores like this is my experience, and it might not be across the board, but so I tried to pre-order Lorcana from various different distributors. I only got it from the distributor that I had as assigned basically for the one I was doing the pre-release for, and then after that, other distributors said they did not have any other product that except was allocated for people that were running the events. So that shows me that was a huge difference from Lorcana when I could get just oodles of it from, I think, 4 or 5 different distributors. And so they are doing the right things at least to kind of control that supply. But at the same point, that kills growth. That is basically trying to, like, it has to be profitable at the printing level. We've seen this kill board games too. I give these examples of like Scythe and Blood Rage. I don't know if people are really familiar with the board game scene, but those are kind of evergreen titles. They are very, very popular games and they'll sell. But oftentimes what ends up happening is manufacturers print too much of it and they're not in the warehousing industry, and neither are stores and neither are distributors. I mean, distributors should be, but everyone wants to basically get these products out. They don't want to have boxes upon boxes upon boxes kind of collecting dust. And so if you have a product that isn't selling as fast as you think it should be, then what ends up happening is you get kind of blown out and you have to print basically based on how much you're going to sell in the next whatever benchmark you have, 4 or 6 months or whatever. And you don't want any more than that because that starts to actually cost you. And I think that's what Lorcana is trying to do. They're trying to find that perfect line where stores can make money, where they're actually, justified and continue on with this product. And that's the why, like Whispers in the Well and Fable, kind of show that miss signal is I think there's actually a lack of supply of where the market could actually take. But then also that creates like a missed signal to the speculators again that, oh my God, this is a hot product I can actually make money on, and then they want to order more, and you kind of can see this like the snake that devours its own tail type going on with this, kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. And Lorcana is just trapped in this little cycle. So this is why I'm going to put this at dead cold right now. This is the game that I think is in the greatest risk of really completely falling off, or maybe just being another, basically one of Ravensburger's graveyard games that was super popular at one point. I mean, Fantasy Flights and Ravensburgers are notorious for this. So I say this at the very beginning with Lorcana. I had very little faith in this game when it first, and everyone lost their minds about Lorcana when it first came out because Disney was such a strong appeal. There's no way it could fail. But here we are now in 2025, and the warning signs do not look good for Lorcana. All right, let's go on to Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! I think it cooling off last time around. I'm actually going to put this in stable because Yu-Gi-Oh! Has kind of found its place. This is one that did go through the supply problems, and they still have a problem with like making winner sets and loser sets. But this is a game now that has decided that, I mean, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has been the third best selling card game at points. I mean, it might still be, and it's got a massive fan base. It is an aging fan base, though, and that's one of the very worrisome signs. But I think the last time we definitely had this at cooling off. And these last few sets, though, have actually been pretty stable. So it sounds like they found their groove again of how much they need to print to really speaking to their audience. And it's feeling okay. And again, this is coming from someone that objectively has nothing to do with Yu-Gi-Oh! We don't carry it here at the store. We don't run any events. But just from looking at the market data before when I was researching this, it looked a lot better than in the past. And again, you got to see, I'm judging this based upon how they were and not really how, comparing them against the other. You say, oh, Yu-Gi-Oh! Versus Lorcana, it's got to be a joke, Kevin. It's got to be a joke. No, I'm definitely comparing where they were and where they are now and where I see them going in the future. I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Has actually found its little groove now. This company is notorious, though, for destroying that. And we can go back down in the dumps with Yu-Gi-Oh! Where it becomes like, Fire sold for 85% off. But I'm not going to talk much about Yu-Gi-Oh! Because this isn't my wheelhouse for Yu-Gi-Oh! So we'll move on to Star Wars Unlimited, which I would say is more in my wheelhouse. So Star Wars Unlimited, I am going to put in the cooling off. I actually don't think it's in as bad shape as Lorcana, with the main thing is sales data for singles. So this is still something that does tend to be more on the collector side. It still is banking a lot on the kind of the Star Wars fanboys just buying to collect cards because, as we stated, collectibles are hot right now. Star Wars has had some recent movies and everything that it still has that fan base that collects everything Star Wars, and it's definitely banking off that. The problem I'm having with Star Wars Unlimited is they're pretty tone deaf with like this game I think should be a lot hotter than it really is. the problem with like Lorcana and Star Wars Unlimited is there's too much copy pasta of how the game mechanics work that you really can't justify playing like Magic the Gathering, Star Wars Unlimited, and Lorcana. You have to like pick your favorite. And with Magic just like absolutely taking off, I think that's why we're having Lorcana and Stars Unlimited kind of in the dumps too. And as I stated early with that analogy of trying to fly before you even learn to crawl, Stars Unlimited is probably the most guilty of this, as they already printed Carbonite boosters. Like it took Magic years and years to get to the point where they had enough equity built up to actually, and people actually chasing stuff to actually go for the collector booster route, where Stars Unlimited just jumped the gun and like did a couple sets, and they came out with these Carbonite boosters, which then, when there's so much value in those products compared to trying to open up booster boxes, you see the situation we're in. And the problem we're having with Stars Unlimited is basically every set right now, the Carbonites are strong, the booster boxes are terrible. So they've picked a winner product, and basically the market has now figured it out, and no one wants to be the dummy dum-dums and buy the boxes. So everyone just wants Carbonites. They don't want to waste their money on, and so this is like people that wouldn't, and this happened in Magic the Gathering too. It's people that ordinarily wouldn't buy collectors. They'd rather have draft boosters or play boosters in this case. But when it's so lopsided where the value is, it feels like you're pushed. The smart money is just to buy the Carbonite or the collector booster as far as Magic is concerned. And that's what's happened with Star Wars. And a little bit of spoiler alert, Star Wars is in such bad shape. I mean, they're trying to make this sound like a good thing, but I have heard that we're going to go into a massive Star Wars Unlimited sale at the distribution level for holiday support. And what that really is telling me is they have way too much product they need to get rid of. And so they're going to do this holiday sale to try to push a lot of Star Wars product. But again, what ends up happening is this sends a missed signal to the market, because people that are trying to sell it right now are now going to get overloaded with a bunch of new product that came in from to the distribution level, but at a lower price point, that then people are going to now undercut them on the eBays and TCG players, even at the local level. And that is just going to dump the price down even further and cause even less confidence in the market. And it's just, again, it's a vicious cycle with Star Wars Unlimited. They also need to figure out their print run issues. They're a little bit better shape, in my opinion, as far as the organized play is concerned compared to Lorcana. It really does feel like Lorcana is trying to start from scratch again. And Stars Unlimited is in at least a better place, still running on some momentum, but it's definitely in a cooling off phase. And it's crazy because these two, Stars Unlimited and Lorcana, were hot with their first few sets, where the market just couldn't get enough of it. And everyone thought they had strong IPs. The games were actually, 4 games that are based up on IPs, like Stars Unlimited and Lorcana, are definitely a lot more serious in doing it right than other ones that were just, TCGs based on IPs in the past. So I'm going to put it as a cooling off phase. All right, let's go on to Sorcery. So Sorcery, I'm going to put this as a warm and rising, because it's coming out with a Gothic set, which has already had massive pre-sales. And they did another wave of both beta edition boosters as well as Arthurian Legends, and the market just ate it up. And now this is a niche of a niche game, but if you actually go to TCG Player data, there are collector cards that are sold. The Dragon Lord little scene boxes or whatever, the little collector's boxes, they sold through the roof. They did very well. And the Gothic pre-orders are incredibly strong. This is a community-driven game that is very, very, very kind of ravenous for this game. So the fans of Sorcery are definitely fans of Sorcery. I get comments every day and emails every day, Kevin, you got to try Sorcery, you got to try Sorcery. To me, though, it kind of falls in the same category of Flesh and Blood. The reason why I am personally not carrying or playing it a lot is we're so stretched thin. In our local area, we have to kind of pick which ones we're going to support. We can't just support everything. We have to kind of steer people towards the things that are doing well. Otherwise, we kind of cannibalize the scene. We stretch too thin that, have 2 people show up for everything, but not, we'd rather have 18 people show up to one thing than 2 people show up to 9 different things. So that's kind of the I know if I'm in that kind of category, I think a lot of other stores are in that category. However, the people in the know that like Sorcery, they like Sorcery. And the Gothic set is doing very well for pre-sales. And you'd have to put this as warm and rising. It's definitely got its fan base, and if they can control the kind of the print runs to match that, I think they'll do fine. So I'm going to put this in the warm and rising. All right, we're going to put this in the Bandai B squad, where this is like the Digimons. This is the Union Arenas. I think we're going to put this in the cooling off, because I think not only that, but Bandai just doesn't seem to care as much about these games, I've noticed. They are really kind of banking on just like, how many people are interested in these IPs? Okay, we'll print to that number. They still support like promos and everything like that. It's TCG player sales are pretty stagnant. So all in all, it's a game that will sell, but I think that Bandai is focused on where they should, and it's smart of them. They're focused on One Piece and Gundam because those two are doing hot. And so this one is, kind of go on the back burner for the B Squad. So there are a ton of games in this category for Bandai. You can go and look them up yourself. But I think some of the bigger ones like Digimon, Union Arena, and they've never really been able to. I mean, there was a point where Digimon was a super hot game, but that's been years. Alrighty, I guess that leads us to Magic. I kind of randomized these when I was going on. So Magic, I'm actually going to put this in the, I don't know, I want to put it in the stable, but I'm gonna put it in the stable neutral. I want to put it in the cooling off right now. So I don't know how long I've already spent on this video being 25 minutes, and I could talk an hour and 25 minutes about the state of Magic the Gathering, and we'll save that for another video. Here's my TLDR of Magic the Gathering. Wizards of the Coast has done everything possible to destroy their own game. So, like, I was watching another video where they're talking about like they're really banking on Universes Beyond, and all in all, that's what a company should just be more concerned about sales than anything. And then I think that's kind of the problem with Magic. Magic has forgotten that it's a game first. That what keeps the health of the game is the game. It's a trading card game. It's not a trading cards. It's a trading card game. Magic is so jealous of Pokemon. They want their cards graded, and they want little vending machines. They want to the point where everyone is just so crazy about Magic, and then meanwhile they print 1 billion secret layers in a row. So this is kind of the problem I'm having with the confidence of Magic. So from a store's perspective, they FOMO'd everyone it up with Spider-Man. You got to get it to Spider-Man. You don't know, it's a hot selling set. You better get it if you want supply to last through the holiday seasons. You better buy as much as possible, and then it sells. It's the second best selling standard set of all time, but there is so much stinking supply out there that then Wizards dumps it on Amazon. And again, we can argue about how that happens, but there are contracts with Amazon of how much they give Amazon. And Amazon is going to blow out products no matter what. They're going to find the price point. How Amazon works is algorithmic. They always kind of tinker around with numbers until it is selling. So if it doesn't sell at 105, they'll bump it down to 101, no matter what they got in on it, because they have deals directly with distributors that probably have some sort of profit sharing. I don't know exactly how Amazon does it, but they're able to work on margins that no one else can. And they are willing to lose money on products if it means like just leading to a sale, because they've realized that people that shop on Amazon always add other things. And that's where they make their profit margin. It's a business model that nothing else can actually replicate, because we're not set up that way. And so if Wizards of the Coast continues to give so much supply to Amazon, Amazon will always just basically bulldoze the market. And that's what it did with Spider-Man. And so it's a huge warning sign, because this is how it was during Lord of the Rings. And you think that Magic would learn from the lessons of Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings was also a set that sold and sold and sold. But if we remember that market time period, it wasn't that great for Magic. In fact, people even called it a bear market. While Wizards of the Coast is making record profits, the rest of the market, the secondary market, the stores and the distributors, were all basically drowning from losses in Magic the Gathering. We're talking New Japan all the way through like Commander Masters. And so it's crazy that Magic did not learn their lesson from the last time they did this. And what we're seeing is now even worse, because the amount of secret layers that they're producing, that's the problem too, is the cards that they've included in secret layers are like recent reprints. So what they're doing is like, hey everyone, open up this booster box for this chase card, but don't you worry, we're going to make a better version in a week in a secret layer that then we're going to try to FOMO you to purchase it. And don't worry, we're actually going to print another version in the same card in another secret layer or in another list slot coming up. And so it's just like, again, I think that it's collector's fatigue, wallet fatigue, it's everything. Like, again, I'm going to leave it here with Magic because I rant so much about Magic, but I've never seen a game that could be the envy of all trading card games. There's basically, every game is trying to base their game off of somewhat of Magic. Like, imagine having such a utility-driven game that you wouldn't have to worry about an IP backing it up or worry about some sort of ultra collectability. That utility alone has driven Magic for 30 plus years. And now that they've completely thrown that out and forgotten what they were at first. And I am actually worried about Magic the Gathering. I'm frustrated. I think being a store owner has put even a more negative outlook on it. And so maybe I'm too blinded kind of by my rage for how they've mismanaged that aspect of it, of kind of honoring their strategic partners or realizing the ecosystem that made Magic great. And so part of me even wants this game to fail. So take it for what it is, for where I'm putting it for Magic, because we have come off some big sets like Final Fantasy and admittedly, like we're going into Avatar that does have strong sales. And so stable neutral might seem a little bit weird. But yeah, I'm going to put it there because Magic is just fumbling when they could be. It should be scorching. This thing should be right here in the sun is where Magic should be. And unfortunately, it's here because we have a company that is so tone deaf and it's just mismanaging and mismanaging and mismanaging at every turn. All right, let's go on to Pokemon. I'm actually going to put Pokemon not in the scorching. I'm actually going to put Pokemon in the warm and rising. I think it's fallen off of its height. And so the warning sign is definitely that Mega is falling off and things even like Surging Spark. And a lot of the graded cards. And then I don't know if it's their own fault. I think it's just like Pokemon kind of fell victim to outside pressures. Crypto too. I think like this is like what ended up happening with like the crypto craze is there was a lot of interest from people that were super into crypto. And then it hit mainstream and then people had no business getting into crypto, got into crypto. We've seen it so many times in other hobbies too. And I think Pokemon is really suffering from that. I'm not going to talk too much about Pokemon here. I think everyone is oversaturated with the amount of Pokemon videos and market videos of Pokemon. But I'm going to still put this as scorching hot because Phantasmal Flames, no one can get enough of it. It's still being purchased. But we are seeing a lot of people exit kind of the Pokemon scene. And it's not the people that should be exiting. Like the speculators, the tourists are still in Pokemon. It's a lot of people that this is something I've seen locally here is people that have purchased Pokemon from me for years have moved over to other stuff because it's no longer fun because they've been priced out. There are also some very interesting with Pokemon. If you've noticed too that like there are a lot of like $2 to $5 cards that are starting to spike because now since it's so inaccessible to collect the ultra pricey cards like the alt arts and the hits, what they call hits from every set, that people are going back and like finding kind of meme cards that they're collecting, and that's kind of had its own little subculture, which is kind of cool with Pokemon. So I don't think Pokemon is any danger whatsoever, but I'm not going to put it in scorching because I think it's definitely fallen off of its height of, I don't know, where would we even put the height? Maybe Destin's Rivals. Alrighty, so we're on it to Weiss Schwarz. Weiss Schwarz is something I'm going to put stable and neutral. I think, again, they found their groove. It's very similar to Yu-Gi-Oh! It depends on the title. This is a lot of them. They've had a lot of reprints, though, and it's been a while since there's been some reprints triggered for Weiss Schwarz. And it's, I think, like what the Hololive and Fairy Tail. There's been a few of them that have sold above expectations. And it's a game that has its little following, and it's doing quite well, and it's printing to demand, and it's not really trying to bank on this TCG bubble or this, the speculation that's happening right now. And kudos to them. I think they kind of found their groove. I'm going to put like Yu-Gi-Oh! And Weiss Schwarz, hats off. They know what they are, and they're not trying to be someone they're not. And that's led to a nice stable market and a nice little niche they've carved out for themselves. Not going to talk too much more about that. All right, on to universes. This is the one that I'm almost going to put dead cold. I think I'm going to be nice and put it in the cooling off. The problem with universes, they just had a smash hit called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And then right around the corner, we have Magic the Gathering coming out with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And it's kind of the same color scheme and branding. And it just spells disaster for universes because the game actually is overly complicated for a simplistic game. Honestly, I think they'd have to go to the drawing board and redo a different game before it could really take off with stores. We saw this My Hero Academia being super hot. We saw, like, again, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles try to breathe new life in this. I don't think that, like, our Attack on Titans did well for universes or Godzilla did well for universes as much as they thought it would. And I don't know what else they can do. And so this is a game that I do think is kind of on its last legs. Maybe they can just have enough IP power and keep creating different, like Street Fighter type stuff that they have access to IPs that other games don't have at the moment. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see with this. But we tried to get into it. We tried to get a community going for universes. It's very, very tough though. Like I said, there has been some times where this has been some hot games like My Hero Academia. It definitely isn't one of those times. I think that if you look at sales data for it, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is okay. But again, that's the best way I can explain universes, just okay. And now they're actually managing Riftbound. And so I think a lot of their attention will be actually making Riftbound to its potential, and I think its own game is going to suffer. That's why I'm tempted. Maybe I'll put this down kind of in the middle there of Cooling Off and Dead, and that's where it fits. All right, let's go on to One Piece again, and now I'm really going to act like I'm like this Bandai simp here, but I think that good old One Piece is still scorching hot. Like, there have been some complaints about OP13, but OP13 is still selling really well. It's like $175 for a box right now. There are thousands of copies moving for tier cards for a lot of the Emu decks, and the Ace decks are doing quite well. The sales are quite well. There are tournaments that are still completely selling out. The viewership for One Piece tournaments is high, and still has that collector craze. We had a lot of people coming over from Pokemon to collect One Piece, and there's not much I can say about it that I haven't said in other videos. I think it's kind of the perfect game right now. It's got that perfect balance between collectability, utility, and players versus collectors. We've seen cards that were 25 cents forever go up to like $2-3, which were utility driven, which is a good sign for One Piece, because I think that every game eventually needs to turn that corner. They can't rely solely on collectability, because collectability is fickle. And utility is not. Utility is a direct correlation to how many people are playing your game. And it is a game. And I'm going to reiterate these. These things are games. That's the one thing that sets them aside from collectibles, is they're games. And so they're all going to have some sort of utility-driven aspect to them, even Pokemon. And so Pokemon doesn't have to rely as much upon it as these other games, but all of them should keep it in mind. And that's a good sign for One Piece, is it's moving in that direction without even like suffering from collectability, because there's some really expensive, highly sought after cards for One Piece, and they're still keeping that attention for the collector. So kudos to One Piece. I think it's going to be the second hottest game, because I think MetaZoo is actually the hottest game. No, it's dead cold. This is something that it hasn't had any, like, TCG player hasn't even bothered putting the new MetaZoo. I know that MetaZoo is coming out for its third set, I believe, for its relaunch. And of course we have to put it in here because I think MetaZoo is just the ultimate, like, this was the biggest pump and dump kind of like speculator driven. And it feels bad because I know there are a lot of people that are really into this game, because I mean, the game's solid. It's got fine mechanics and had a little cute theme to it. And I get it. I get why people would see the appeal, but mostly MetaZoo was just, it was just if a TCG had a hype, like if it was a representation of like everything rotten about TCGs, of not really having the structure that needed to justify the sales that it had. You had a particular person pumping it like crazy, and everyone just followed his lead like it was gospel, and it was just doomed. And it's just a good warning sign. I'd like to keep it on this list because, yeah, it's pretty much dead cold. Again, can anyone even find the new boxes on TCG Player? Because I can't. I think TCG Player doesn't even care to put it up because they don't even have any faith that people are buying it. So I think the only outlets is to like try to go and find like eBay data and whatnot. And I didn't even like bother to try to find that. And the thing about MetaZoo too that is cards have never sold at high quantities on MetaZoo. There was like the Rudy promos and then nothing else. So yeah, that's enough. We'll talk about that. Let's actually end this video with this one here, which I'm going to put at the top dog. I'm going to put it scorching hot, which is Riftbound League of Legends. So Riftbound right now is crazy that I'm saying this. I think the game that's actually suffering the most because of Riftbound is actually Magic the Gathering. So the amount of content creators that I've seen jump ship over to Riftbound from Magic the Gathering and are creating consistent, like people like Jim Davis. Man, I had a list of them, and now that's the one that are like creating channels that have. These are people that are just diehard Magic players that have basically, they live, breathe, eat, sleep Magic. Have now moved on to Riftbound. And the last time I saw this happen, you got to think Brian Kibler with Hearthstone. And like, I think it was Stanislav Sivka. There's a bunch of people that jump shipped over to Hearthstone because they saw the writing on the wall that the competitive scene was so much better over there and they could actually make something from it. So that's kind of been the problem with Magic for so long, is competitive players have never really been able to kind of grind out a living. And you can argue, like, should they be able to? And, we can have that discussion. But the fact is that other esports, and I put TCGs could definitely be in this category, there have been people who have hit celebrity status and been able to grind out careers like sports stars have in esports. So why not in TCGs? And that's why we saw a lot of people like Brian Kibler and Stanislav Sivka move over to Hearthstone, and they did quite well, and they made a lot of money. Riftbound is already held some massive tournaments and got massive streamer viewership and has a massive IP around a massive esport that has existed. And like, if there's any company that can do it right and has kind of the money to back it, it's League of Legends. And the fact that it's doing so well right now with kind of a lot of the hiccups that it's had is showing that I think this game is here to stay. And the one game that's actually been hit the most is Magic the Gathering from it. And if you don't believe me, go look at the TCG sales right now. Everything is on the downturn for Magic. Riftbound is nuts. Like this is what's showing us a utility-driven game too. There are definitely collectible cards in this, but there is cards that are seeing play versus cards. I wouldn't say like a Jinx, for example, is less iconic than one of these other characters. I'm not a big League of Legends nerd, so you have to forgive me. I don't know the different characters. But we are looking up like specific alt arts from like the characters are considered bad right now in the game, and they're not selling for the greatest. And then you go and look at like League of Legends itself and like products that sell well or heroes that are iconic, and they're actually quite iconic. And so there's that kind of mismatch of where if it was just collectible driven, like all these League of Legends nerds that are just trying to get in the Pokemon craze and have some sort of tangible cardboard that they can slip in a binder to be kind of fanboys for the game, you would see probably the more iconic cards go for higher prices. But the cards that are going for high prices right now are cards in competitive decks. And that is showing that this is a researched and a utility driven game like we haven't seen out the gates. Like Wars Unlimited, Lorcana, they had a lot of hype behind them, but they didn't have the utility driven behind them right out the get-go. They had more of the collectible aspect of it. League of Legends actually seems a little bit more lopsided on utility versus collectability. And me as a store owner and as a person that dabbles in the market, this is something that I look for in a game that is going to last. How many people are actually buying the cards to sleeve it up and play it? How many people are trying to make that run to be like the next champion of something? And it's sad. It's sad that we have all this energy for Riftbound that Magic could have easily had with like the hype of Final Fantasy, and they've bungled it so bad. Like between the collectivication and the commanderification and the whalification, whatever term you want to use for Magic, they've just lost sight of what made Magic great, which was the kind of the competitive, the utility-driven aspect of people actually from kitchen table all the way to the pro circuit. People were playing the damn game, and Magic's kind of lost sight of that. So we have this Riftbound that's come in, this a breath of fresh air that has the IP to back it, but not just like an IP based on something like Star Wars or Lorcana. It's an IP that's based upon a competitive game that's filled stadiums before. I mean, that's what I try to emphasize this. The people that don't believe that Riftbound has legs now, after trying it myself, like at first I was like, it could be just this other. We've seen these fall off. We've seen some games that are based upon video games too that haven't done well. But Riftbound is actually very solid, mechanically speaking. It's got people brewing. It's got people talking about the game. It's got Tellurian Community Colleges playing the games on various different podcasts or different, or not podcasts, different, whatever you want to call it, just other people's channels and on his own channel. And like I said, these Magic pros jumping over because they see the writing on the wall. This is a very skill-oriented game right out the gates. We've seen the Chinese tournaments. So there is like tight play and like picking specific cards for and kind of metagaming is something that's definitely there. And so it's just got all of the aspects of something that is going to lead to kind of a hot, long-lasting game. We are already seeing massive pre-sale prices for the second set. They could definitely reprint this. I think that distributors are so just desperate, they're buying up Chinese copies and getting it shipped over here. So the U.S. market can actually have, some sort of cards to play around with. Like you see Uncommon selling for like $5-10. Yeah, Riftbound is definitely here to stay. So anyway, long video. I didn't expect to go this long with this Barometer video. Maybe I need to learn to be more concise with these, but I hope you enjoy this Barometer video of, where I see them. So a little bit of recap. Like if I were to give my predictions, like Lorcana is the game that worries me the most. I am particularly not going to be carrying any inventory of Lorcana. We're selling out of cards. We're selling out of all of our inventory. It's been pretty dead here personally. We've had this super niche of players that play it, and I'll keep catering to them for as long as they, want. But it is definitely cooled off to the point that, and again, are we really going to Riftbound is really going to gobble up a lot of these TCGs, and for right now, it's hitting Magic too, but it might be like once it gets so hot and popular and people at stores that come into play like Lorcana and Star Wars Unlimited start seeing all these other players. Oh, what are you playing? Oh, Riftbound? Okay. I think it's going to cannibalize those two games specifically. And that's kind of the problem when you have these like really carved out niches like Flesh and Blood or even Yu-Gi-Oh! Or the Bandai and even Universes at that point, Weiss Schwarz. You're a lot less likely to be swallowed up by like a new coming, the cute new girl, which is Riftbound, like the other, cute girls tried to be, like the Star Wars Unlimited and Lorcanas. I mean, they were at one point in time playing that role. And now we have something sexier, and it's going to, I think, really eat those two up. And then, of course, try to topple the big boy, which is Magic. Is Magic going to die? No. I think that Magic is just like, I keep thinking about it. I think like, how many times have people tried to make a better chess and they just failed and gone back to chess? I think there's Magic is. Magic is just kind of the holy grail of a TCG. And you really, really, really would have to do something to nuke it for Magic to completely die. Are we going to go to a point where we're going to go into a bear market because Wizards of the Coast is not going to change their printing practices and it's going to be an environment where, people aren't going to be showing up to F&Ms again and you have the kitchen table and Commander and little things here and there, but really not the greatness that it could be? Absolutely. And that, maybe I could be proven wrong. Maybe we'll go into another Final Fantasy for 2026 with Magic really hitting it off out the park with like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle or Star Trek, but I don't see it happening. So I'm really waiting for Chris Cox to unveil we think this set is going to outsell Final Fantasy, because I don't see it. I don't see the equity that's left. I don't see, like, Commander players seem to have what they want. There's like, how much more can they push in that direction? Where can they go? Like, the only thing I could see Magic actually doing is trying to go back to the competitive scene and really trying to, going back to be player focused and game focused, but they're too addicted. They're too addicted to that cardboard crack. And we have a game now with Riftbound that seems to be so player focused, so game focused, and collectibility and the Benjamins. And I mean, of course, it's all about the Benjamins. It's all about making money, but it doesn't have to be one or the other. You can focus on creating, like the NFL doesn't, or the NHL or sports. They don't try to like milk their fan base over like the state of the game. They realize that the game is good. There will be a fan base buying stuff, and maybe you'll disagree with that sentiment, but yeah. That's I think that Magic's lost sight. So it'll be interesting as far as Pokemon and Magic are concerned of where they'll fall in 2026. I think both of them are definitely at their heights and are going to have a little bit of correction. But as exciting, at least we do have the kind of holy trinity right now of Gundam, One Piece, and Riftbound. They're going so insanely strong that I think that TCGs, at least going into 2026, are on the up and up. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this video. Kevin with Gunroll Games. Thanks for watching.